After months of grafting through applications and fielding countless rejections, you finally land a full-time role on the buy side or sell side, depending on what tickles your fancy really. Long story short, you're in a role involved with some fancy investment stuff and eager to professionally develop, get promoted, paid the big bucks, and DJ at Coachella in your spare time like Mr. Solomon. So with all of that being said, you convince yourself that the best way to achieve all of this is to do the CFA, the Chartered Financial Analyst Qualification, arguably the hardest and most technical qualification in finance, with recent pass rates of 29%. Now what if I told you that you don't have to dive straight into the CFA to get paid the big bucks in finance, and there are other courses you can take to ease yourself into the investment ecosystem, progress, and still get paid the bag? In this video, I'll be covering warm-up courses you can take before the CFA, an overview of the investment qualification I'm currently studying for, my approach to studying whilst working full-time, and how I'm going to ace my upcoming investment exam in 2 months. I hope. Now, a quick disclaimer guys, this is not financial or investment advice, but the most important investment you can make right now that will deliver guaranteed returns in this bearish market is an investment in the like button. So go ahead and smash that. Thank you very much. When I got into corporate world a few years ago, I was super keen on doing anything that would increase my chances of getting promoted and earning more money. And the narrative was that being more qualified versus some certificates that no one really looks at would achieve this, as if getting into 50k debt didn't make me qualified enough. Anyways, after 4 years in corporate, I've come to realize that people value on-the-job experience over paper certificates. However, these certificates do open doors. After all, your degree is what convinced firms to give you an interview in the first place, even though they don't check degrees 9 times out of 10. Like, I really want to understand who makes the rules, because 4 years in corporate and no one has asked for a transcript of my degree. Anyways, I digress. In the investment world, the Chartered Financial Analyst Qualification is seen as the complete package to ascertain your competence in managing investments. But with pass rates of below 30%, an average study times of 900 hours to complete, I honestly don't think it's the first qualification you should be jumping into as a junior in the investment field, especially with how demanding the full-time gig is already. I think people fail to realize how hard it is to balance demanding work, maintaining a social life, and studying at the same time. It's actually manic, and in my humble opinion, I would say there are 3 things that you need to do before committing to a challenging course like the CFA. Number 1, settle into your role and develop a routine. Number 2, take at least 6 months to learn on the job. And number 3, ease yourself in with some lower level warm-up courses before attempting the beast of a qualification really and truly. Now, I'll be focusing on tip number 3 because 1 and 2 is self-explanatory. The warm-up course I'm currently studying for at the moment is the Investment Operations Certificate, which is accredited by the Chartered Institute of Securities and Investments, aka CISI. CISI is a global professional body for those who work in the financial and investment professions. They have about 44,000 members and offer a wide range of courses for finance and investment professionals. So in terms of the breakdown, the Investment Operations Certificate provides an overview of investments in financial services, relevant regulation, and also covers technical units relevant to the investment industry. There are 3 units to complete to obtain the overall qualification, which include Introduction to Securities and Investments, Financial Regulation, and a technical unit based on your role. And this is where you have the benefit of picking a unit that is specific to your profession. I find the title slightly misleading because it's not purely investment operations, and there are very much technical investment concepts outlined in the book, but it's more so at a general level. However, I believe the general level overview is vital as a junior professional or someone pivoting from another industry into the investment team. What I appreciate about the qualification as well is that there's international pathways due to the CISI being a globally recognized body. The fees can be broken down into 3 main buckets: CISI membership, exam bookings, and then study materials. I'm currently only studying for 1 unit at the moment, and I've paid about £500 with all my study materials and exams booked. More details on the fees can be found on the CISI website and varies based on your unit selections. If you think about it, you're more likely to get approval from an employer for a £500 course than the CFA, where registrations alone start at 1k. You want to demonstrate that you can commit to studying whilst working full-time, so they have confidence in investing more in your professional development in the long term. Now, in terms of how I'm studying, if I'm being completely honest, I haven't really been diligent or studious with the course content for a number of reasons. Laziness, my actual day job, life in general, but most importantly, I didn't want to study this course in the first place. So a bit of context on that last point. Before I started my private equity internship, my last gig was at a consulting firm where I was advising investment firms on their compliance and operational matters. Consultants in the role were all required to complete a range of investment qualifications as part of a development program to better to service our clients. Long story short, I ended up leaving to chase my dreams of working in private equity and was required to pay for the course I'd been enrolled on per my contract. And obviously I wasn't going to let that money go in vain, so here I am now making a video about how I'm studying for a course that I didn't want to do in the first place. Life is really funny. Anyways, with that being said, I would say I probably started taking studying seriously about a month ago and have been fairly consistent with only about 3 chapters left in Unit 1 to complete before I start to focus solely on practice tests and revisions of topics that I'm really unsure of. Before I delve into my approach for exam prep, please note that this is just what I personally am doing and my methods are not guaranteed to work for you, as we all have different ways of retaining information, so you just need to try and see what's effective for you. Now, before you start looking into the content of the work you're studying, I would say the most important thing is to actually book the date for the exam before you just do anything. The reason I'm saying this is because I feel like one of the reasons why I've been fairly inconsistent with studying is because I haven't booked the exams. There was no like D-day that I was working towards and I was just really cruising. But now that I've actually booked the date of the exam, the urgency to study has kind of kicked in and I'm very much, getting my nerd on. For the most part. It's also super important to do this because the CISI materials update periodically, which could potentially make some of the materials you're studying redundant if you haven't taken the exam in a certain period of time. So for example, my current study materials covers from August 2021 to July 2022. So if I try to take the exams after July, I have to update my study materials, which essentially means starting the whole study process again, and no one's really got time for that. Once you've got the exam date booked, you want to make sure that you have all your study materials in order. So as I mentioned earlier, the investment operations certificate has 3 units and I'm currently studying for the first unit, namely Introductions to Securities and Investments. So the first thing you need is the actual textbook with all the course materials and content, and then access to the virtual learning via a learning partner. So the learning partner is usually an organization that teaches the content and has an online repository of classroom videos for you to study. So I was enrolled with Fitch Learning and they're very good and well recognized, so I would highly recommend them, to be quite honest. And I know you're super eager to start studying straight away whenever you have an exam, but in my opinion, you need to allocate time first before diving into the content. You need time for studying the course materials, time for practicing test questions, and then time for going over any topics you're unsure of. The CISI recommend about 80 hours of study before the exam, and that's pretty much what I'm doing. I've allocated about 2 hours a day during the week for study, and of course I wouldn't be working in corporate if I didn't put that on a calendar. As it stands, I have about 70 plus hours till my exam, with only 3 chapters of the material to study for before I start focusing on practice questions and going over any topics I'm unsure of. So to be quite honest, I have an ample amount of time to really ace this exam, I hope. Once you've booked your exams, secured your study materials and allocated the appropriate amount of time towards studying, it's time to actually start studying. So there are a total of 11 chapters in Unit 1 and it takes me about 2 hours to get through 1 chapter. So overall that's about 22 hours to get through the course material. But like I said, I've been fairly inconsistent. There's slow days sometimes and I'm only human. So let's just say we allocate about 30 to 40 hours for that portion of things, which leaves about 50 hours for practice questions and then going over any topics you're unsure of, really and truly. So that's kind of your framework for how you allocate time and how you're going to approach getting the course materials in. So the method I found to be the most effective for getting through the chapters is textbook study and practice questions, mark practice questions, virtual classroom study and notes, review practice questions and notes, take virtual practice test, and then mark virtual tests. And it sounds like a very long-winded process, but it's really not that deep. So I usually read a chapter and answer the textbook questions at the end of my reading session. Once I do this, I mark my answers by highlighting what I got wrong in red, leaving what I got right in black, and added anything I missed out in green. The color coding is really effective for me from a memory perspective, and of course I use Notion because we don't really do paper around here, obviously ESG, and all of that malarkey. With that being said, once I finish with the textbook studying, I usually progress to the virtual classroom session via Fitch Learning to take notes on the chapter that I just went through and studied in the textbook. Again, once I complete this, I review the textbook practice questions and the notes I just took via virtual learning, and then proceed to do a practice test on Fitch Learning. I then review any answers that I got wrong on Fitch Learning practice test and add it to my notes for review later. This process usually takes about 2 to 3 hours, and by the end of a chapter study, you should have your text textbook practice questions, virtual classroom notes, and any wrong answers from your virtual test on a page. This should be a comprehensive set of notes for you to go over once you've taken this approach for each chapter. Like I said earlier, I only have like 3 more chapters to complete and will follow this process throughout. Once that's done, I'll proceed to reviewing my notes with particular attention to topics I'm not fully confident on and practicing the exam style questions on Fitch Learning. And yeah, there you have it, peeps. That's how I'm gonna ace my upcoming investment exam in July, I hope. I don't really have any presentable Notion templates here, guys, because I'm honestly just using Notion as a notebook for like studying. But my mate Abby made the exact same video on how she's studying for the IMC at the moment, and she has like a fancy ass template which she's like using for studying, and I've linked it in the description. Anyways, with that being said, if you guys like the video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you don't miss a thing. And yeah, man, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Deuces.